This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach.
Hello, everybody. Let's go ahead and open up that waiting room and let people in. And if you're watching us on any platform, make sure you let other people know about us and share it to your wall, with your friends, any groups that you're in, because folks, today is an exciting presentation that we don't usually have. It's a different topic, but it's so important as it's affecting so many people around the world. My name is Becca Dukes, as the executive producer of this show. Is that right? Yeah, of this show. And the owner of Daily with Doc and Becca. It is my honor and privilege to be a resource to an amazing community. So if somebody referred you to this program, make sure that you get back with them. They are your person. Now, I am not your host today, so you can clap. It's okay. So today we are going to have my dear friend, Ruth Ellen. She is so much more than the executive production manager for the Daily with Doc and Becca show. She's far more than a co-host, and she is far more than just a certified holistic health coach. She is a warrior princess, an overcomer, and she is someone who has refused to lie down under life's blows and let hardship define her. Instead, she has chosen to rise up. She has sought out help, the wisdom and training she needed, not only for herself and her family, but ultimately so she could turn around and help others like you and I. With that kind of strength and humility and determination is what makes Ruth Ellen such a beautiful person and the perfect host for today's conversation, as we're going to be talking about the wisdom of the wound. And I am super excited as we have back a favorite guest, Tim Marsh. So folks, make sure that you're taking notes, and I'm going to turn it over to Ruth Ellen now. Welcome, Ruth Ellen.
Thank you for that fantastic intro, Rebecca. Those statements, Warrior Princess,
True. They're
are
true.
true. They are true. And I have owned that the last couple of years. I have taken that and I have owned that. I am an overcomer. I have gone through a lot in my life, and things that my body remembered and my mind forgot is one of the biggest things that held me back. And I met Tim Marsh, I think in 2017, I want to say, and started working with him. And it's basically changed my life. I've had a lot of things, little steps along the way, like getting sober 31 years ago. That changed my life. But this started changing my life and chipping away at that hard block that I had created without realizing it had been created. So I'm going to bring Tim on, and I just want to say that this program is for educational purposes only, not meant to treat, diagnose, or cure any diseases or illnesses, and any testimonials are shared as experiences of the individual sharing them. Okay. All right. So here you go. Hello and welcome, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you could make it and that we could start doing this again.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about you and your topic.
Well, I chose the topic to be a question and answer series because I notice I look at patterns when people come through our practice, and I know what I hear from the other practitioners. And a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are jacked up beyond belief. And especially from a wisdom standpoint, a lot of people are in pain because they forgot who they really are without the trauma drama that's in their life.
Right.
And what I wanted to do was just open up rather than talk about a certain topic. I remember when we did these shows before, there was a lot of people who had a lot of questions. So I wanted to open it up and see what happens. I wanted to throw spaghetti against the wall and see what happens. See if it
Okay.
sticks. So
So throw some spaghetti. Let's talk about that wound.
well, a lot of us have wounds that are like the first level wound, and then we have the second level wound. And that second level wound, a lot of people don't want to deal with. And it has to deal with the Carl Jung shadow. A lot of us don't want to go into those deep, dark places. But as you know, and I know, when you do that, you free yourself up. Like Rumi said, one day I woke up and I freed a prisoner. The next day I woke up and realized the prisoner was me.
Yeah.
So, that's really what this is about is when you say wounds, we have three types of wounds: physical, mental, and spiritual. And a lot of us also have wounds in our fascia and in our bodies. And like I
Yes.
did before, I talked about Besser van der Kolk's great book called The Body Keeps the Score.
Mhm.
And that seems to be getting a lot more traction now that everything's all topsy-turvy and people are like, why am I so anxious? It's because we're feeling the stress of not just us, but all those around us because we're hyper stressed.
Yes, we are. I
Hmm.
mean, everybody is stressed out right now. It's crazy,
Yeah.
and um, a lot of people like to cause drama and hate and discontent and fear, um, and it's easy to kind of get lost in that. And a lot of times it's that little trigger that you have
Yeah.
that you don't even realize like why you're reacting so strongly to something.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like you're biting what's called shempa, the hook.
Mhm.
And shempa means the hook. So if you look at if you look at an elephant for an example, right? When they're captured when they're young, there's a ball and chain put around their leg. And as they grow, they get used to that ball and chain. Well, then eventually, when they're adults, they lumber around, and people are like, well, why aren't they moving so quickly? It's because they're still caught up in the hook that was the chain that was around their foot. And a lot of us walk around like that.
Yes. I actually talked about that a little bit, not the same, but it's the same scenario. It's just a different, you know, event.
Yeah.
For me today, I was talking to Rebecca this morning and I was trying to, I got really stressed and I got really upset. And I was trying to explain to her that, there are certain aspects you get trained a certain way to respond a certain way. And it can be to a date.
Sure.
It could be to an event that happened 20 years ago at 5 o'clock on September 15th, or,
Hmm.
and you, some little tiny nugget of something will just trigger that.
Could be a color.
It can be a color. Yes.
It could be a sound. It could be the sound of a baking, like a blender or like a baking, like whisk that trips people off from a bad memory in the childhood.
Hmm.
You know,
Yes.
we remember stuff like that, and that's what Besser van der Kolk talked about is the body keeps the score. And when you start looking at the fascia, that's our second nervous system. So we could be sitting there going, "Why am I upset?" Well, it's because you don't know what's eating you.
Hmm. Yeah. You, that's very true. It's like you don't even
Hmm.
know what's eating you
Hmm.
yourself. You know, um, I had a I had an event happen and it wasn't like a huge, massive event, but every time I smell tar
Hmm.
anywhere, hot tar, um, there were men doing the roof in my house in where I grew up. And the light was off in the bathroom. So I opened the door, but the guy was standing there with his pants down. And every time I smelled tar, I would have this weird reaction.
Hmm.
And at first, when it happened, it was like I just shut the door and just went and played or something, or sat next to my mom. I can't remember exactly what I did. And it wasn't until I was going through therapy and we were doing EFT and it came up.
Hmm. Yep.
And we're talking 15 years ago. I was like 6,
Hmm.
so it, I just,
I mean, it happened.
it's
I mean,
crazy.
the very first time it happened to me, I was a personal trainer. I was working with one of my clients. I put my hand on her and I saw the color yellow, and she had a shoulder problem. And I said to her, I was like, "Well, I see this color yellow," and all of a sudden she just broke out crying. And I said, "What's that about?" She goes, "Well, that's where my ex-boyfriend pushed me up against the locker," and she demonstrated the push, and it was up against the same shoulder. So once I dug out all those muscles and that fascia, she never had the shoulder problem again.
Wow, that's really good.
Hmm.
That's intense.
Yeah. So hopefully, people out there, if they have questions, they can ask them, and we could try to maybe Sherlock Holmes it, or try to figure out what's going on, or give them a little bit different insight.
Mhm. That would be good.
Hmm.
If anybody out there has any questions, let us know. We'll either bring you on if you're here or read your question from Facebook or YouTube. or any of the other number of platforms that are being monitored. Oh, excellent. Marilyn got her camera working. Yay. Go ahead and join us, Marilyn.
Hi, everybody. Okay. I know I carry a lot of baggage, a lot of stuff in the past. I talk to people a lot. And when I'm talking, I always bring up something in the past that happened. A lot of trauma. Can you get releases just by talking about it? Or do you have to be on the table with roping or deep massage? Or because, and is it in the tissue? Is it the bones? Is it the fascia? Is it in everything?
Yeah. So you don't have to have a deep tissue release. You can have a release by going back to your childhood home. Like I did. I went back to my old neighborhood when I was a troubled youth, and that rocked me pretty hard. Or when I went back to my old house, I go back to my old room and there was a lot of trauma that was um, inflicted upon me in my childhood. And I was able to deal with that. It hit me hard, but I really believe that the trauma that I went through when I was younger, my brain had to say, I don't want that. I have to just protect myself. And then, 56 years old, all of a sudden you're like, wow, where'd that come from? Well, it's because it's stored in your fascia, your cellular memory. There's research that just came out that there's a strong relationship to past generational trauma that affects this generation. All you have to do is look at the Holocaust survivors. There's a lot of people who survived that, whose family now has stuff going on and trauma. And they're finding out that it's linked to the fascial memory or the DNA memory, so to speak. I mean, this rabbit hole can go very deep.
But why did going to the house matter? Like you couldn't just visualize your home? You actually had to physically go there. What was the difference?
Probably because when you go back to the scene of the crime, you remember the smell, you remember the colors of the wall, you remember the furniture. In my case, it was a plastic slip cover. And once I saw that rocked me. You know what I mean? So we don't know. It's I like to think of it as, I tell this to my clients. If I'm dealing with trauma in the past, that's in the past, it's over. But something in my brain chemistry makes me feel that it's alive, right? But it's dead. You can't go back into the past. But you can if the past is embedded into your cellular tissue and your fascia and your muscles and your bone and all that stuff. I mean, I worked with somebody, she was a wonderful, wonderful client of mine, and she was schizophrenic, and was about to have her ankles fused. And I touched her ankle and I found this circular ring around the ankle about like that big. And I asked her, what's that? And she goes, well, that's where I had shock therapy. And I said, you mean the real shock therapy? And she goes, yeah. And I said, how many times? She goes, about 12. So when I opened up her ankle started to move and she didn't need the surgery. And that was actually one of the very first things that led me to where I am now in my career.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Marilyn. Right. Thank you. And I'm glad that you asked that question because it's a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a good question.
Yes, it was.
So, I guess if you start looking at trauma, you start looking at the drama that's embedded in the trauma. And once you get rid of the drama, then the trauma really doesn't have much of a hold on you. But you've got to be willing to work on those deep, dark places, and you've got to go spelunking into your past, and you've got to go down into those deep, dark areas. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. But that's
Yeah,
where you find your freedom.
definitely. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
It definitely is. Yeah. I have so many stories, but at the same time, I'm like trying to be careful what I say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't want to say anything bad about an individual that it's from my past a long time ago. But
Mhm.
I just, talking about the fascia, I mean, we've been working on some issues with my fascia.
Oh, yeah.
And I had surgery not that long ago, and it really messed up my body. And when we've gone into the different areas in my back to release the front of my body, which is
Mhm.
crazy. I think it was 3 weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks ago I saw you?
Yeah.
And it clicked a memory that literally took me out of the room.
Yep.
I went somewhere else.
You
And
went to the Bahamas. Yep.
yeah, well, I wish somewhere else. And Tim and I have a little thing that we do. And he'll say, because when I first met him, I was going through some major trauma remembrances and some past life stuff that was pretty scary, actually. Like the fact that I remembered being murdered, and the surrounding area and the smell and the feel. And it was like, way, like, I don't know, 1700, something like that. It was like, I don't know where. So I'm not claiming that. But
Mhm.
we had a little trick that we do. And he'd say, "Where are you?" When he
Mhm.
could see I was going away, because I would do it like every session. I had to sit sometimes in my car for an hour before I could go home. And I would say his address.
Mhm.
And he's at a different location. I couldn't remember the address, and I couldn't remember the other address. And then I just had to start saying, this isn't real. In
Mhm.
this moment, it's not real.
Yep.
Back when it happened, it was very real and very violent, and it happened then. But today, it's not real. And that was one of the things that I've learned, I think, the most, reading different books on trauma. And I used to, what do they call it when you kind of leave your body and you go somewhere? Dissociation.
Mhm.
I used to kind of like do that, and go somewhere safe and quiet and peaceful in my head. And I don't do that anymore, but it took a long time to get there, and so I had to kind of fight my way back. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. And we talked about that for like 5 minutes or something. And
Sure.
and I know your address. I've given it to Rebecca like a bunch of times, and you just couldn't even think.
A
And
lot of times, sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was done
A, a,
basically.
a lot of times when people are in the throes of the trauma, they get it disassociated and they go back into the past. And a lot of times, our job as therapists is to give them a rope that we've tied around their waist, and we can always pull them back to safety instead of letting them get lost.
Mhm.
And when you've worked with the types of trauma that I've dealt with, some of them are so horrific that it takes people hour and a half just to come back down. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm happy we have rooms where we can just let them go to this, and be safe while we cover them up with a blanket and say, okay, you're safe, and peek in on them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that therapeutic model is geared towards that hour frame, and everybody's different.
Oh,
One person's trauma could be 9/11 body parts falling on them.
mm.
Another one could be somebody sitting at Knoebels with a little girl or a little boy having a big ice cream cone 3 stacks high. They're about to lick it and it falls on the ground and they start crying. And people say, is that trauma? Yeah, it's just trauma wearing a different mask. So one of my biggest pet peeves is, oh, well, my trauma is not as bad as this one. Trauma's trauma, right? And we have to understand that. And when you're in this hour model, it's like, okay, I've got 5 minute window to decompress you before I have to go work with somebody else. And as you know, sometimes that doesn't work out.
No, no, it definitely doesn't work that way. Yeah. I know there's been lots of times that you've had to pull me back.
Yeah.
Pull me back. And I'm grateful for the fact that there's rooms now that I can just, you can do, if I can't even, there's been times people, I couldn't even leave the room I was being worked on in. And he had to take the client into his next client into a different room until I was good. And I could leave. And I don't miss that happening every session. I don't miss, it was a lot. And I wish that a lot of therapists, understood that, not just giving the 5 minute window to degauss, get you down, and then 5 minutes to say goodbye, and our next session is whatever, and whatever, those last few minutes. Because when you were at Doc B's in Roslyn, I sat in the lobby for an hour and 45 minutes. One time, I think it was the second time you worked on me. And I needed a bubble space. I needed a space where nobody was going to ask me, are you okay? Do you need water?
Right.
Come back 20 minutes later and keep asking me. So when you moved and you were in Germantown and I could just go sit in my car, I would just sit there. Sometimes I would cry. A lot of times I cry. But I was able to have that peace and quiet. And now I still have that serenity, and feeling safe. And just, I can't express to our audience how much trauma you can carry in your body without even knowing it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, remember when you raised my arm to stretch it? And oh my gosh, didn't even remember that.
But you know what's interesting is
Crazy.
Gabor Mate, he's a famous individual in trauma and stuff. He said something one time that resonated with me. A lot of times when we're traumatized, there's no witness to experience it. So a lot of times therapists, we become the witness. And just because we become the witness, you can go, yeah, that happened. That wasn't something I made up. That actually happened. And then therefore, the 7-year-old child that was traumatized with a bullwhip and a riding crop, they basically, nobody was there to witness their struggle or their pain. But when you have that witness, that inner child of us can go, oh, somebody does see this. And when that inner child sees it, then they can start to process it. They can start to understand it.
Yeah.
What
happened to me?
Exactly. Or if you have a 5-year-old, I mean, I heard this from a podcast called Beyond Success. David Tien, this guy's amazing, right? He said on one of his podcasts, if a child is beaten at 5 years old with a wooden spoon, right? And the parents are doing the tough love thing. Nobody asked that child at 5 years old if that was okay.
No, they
Nobody
didn't.
asked that child if it was okay to do that. And a lot of times when you get into these therapeutic situations and sessions, you can have the best plan laid out, but everything is going to go haywire because everybody's different. Everybody's different. They handle trauma differently. And some of them, they get rocked. And they need to know that whoever's witnessing has their back.
Yes, they need to know that.
Yeah.
And you always make sure we know.
Yeah. I mean,
Always.
you don't get to where I am in my career and say, okay, see you next week. It's like, no, you've got a responsibility.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you and your team all
Oh,
respect that.
oh
Like you
yeah,
make sure.
the team is amazing.
Yeah.
They're so freaking talented. It's ridiculous. And I love how we team up with each other too. So
Yes, me too. I do. Yeah.
but you've been through a lot and look where you are now.
Yeah. Sometimes it blows my mind a little bit.
It does.
Actually,
It
a
blows
lot.
my mind too.
I had somebody say something to me today along those lines that has only known me for close to a year and several months.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say 2 years, but I met them last January, not this past January, but of 25. And,
Mhm.
it just kind of blew my mind, but they saw everything that's happened in the last period of time. And, and someday maybe I'll share all that with you, but I'm not ready right now. But, it made me cry because they
Mhm.
acknowledged what I've gone through
That's right.
and that I did it with grace, which I didn't think I did it with grace a lot of the time because it was hard. It's been really hard. And so I was
It's
just
okay.
very grateful for that comment today.
Yeah,
And I was
no.
able to see somebody in the same feelings and situation and recognize and be able to hold space for her today.
Mhm.
And even say, are you nervous? Are you okay?
Mhm.
And she just said she was nervous. And then I said, can I sit with you? We don't need to talk. Can I just sit with you?
Mhm.
And it helped her and it helped me, and that's one of the things people don't realize too is a lot of the work that you do helps you and your team. It helps all of us, not just the recipient of the elbow in the back or the
Mhm.
thigh or wherever it
Yeah.
ends up or the fingertips. Melissa and her
Mhm.
fingertips. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's really important what you do.
And you mentioned a really interesting point because I've been doing this for 27 years and lost count of how many people. But I'm one individual, and if I've had as many people as I've had, that's healed me just as much as I've helped them. Because growing up with a narcissistic family dynamic, you know, I paid the price.
Mhm.
I paid the price really, really intensely. And just like you, myself, we survived what tried to kill us. And
Literally.
when you survive something like that, some people say, well, okay, well, why did trauma hit me? Well, we don't know, but I like to think sometimes that God or the universe did it to us so we can become more empathic, so we can help more people in the future. Well, we have to get out of our ego and say, oh, well, that's just crap. I got dealt a bad card. Well, if you have a bad burger, do you stop eating burgers? No.
No.
Right. If you have a bad piece of sushi, do you stop eating sushi? Yeah, probably. But what I'm saying is you don't just lock in your loss.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are locking in their loss because they've tried all these other avenues. But there's no such thing as a fascial psychologist. But the fascia holds that memory.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and you know it, and a lot of other people know it.
Yeah.
It's not just chicken skin, and it's not something you can get with a trigger gun or a gua sha or Graston, whatever, because that's all superficial. I'm talking about deep, embedded
Mhm.
trauma into the bone.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like not every single time, but sometimes it's like you're literally transported to that event and it's really happening in your head
Yep.
because it's just so I want to say, and I don't know if it's accurate, it's just so deeply ingrained and embedded in that area of muscle and fascia that you know I had gotten strangled a couple times by an
Good for you.
individual
Keep going. Good
a
for you.
long
Keep
time
going.
ago. And if anybody even like reached to touch my necklace or something, I would freak out. And
Yep.
it didn't make sense to me. And then as I've been learning, it was that. And I know that that person is like lives on the other side of the country and can't touch
Mhm.
me again. And I'm never
Yeah.
going to be on the street trying to buy drugs from somebody ever again. And it's not going to happen. It's just not. Those people are, I don't even know where they are, you know?
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
it makes sense. Like when I work with people who've been traumatized, especially men and women who've been physically assaulted, there's usually a moment, especially a couple recently, they were walking downtown Philadelphia and they decided to take a back alley. Well, they took a back alley and they got rocked. And then when, we're working on them and they're like, I don't understand what made me do that. You were just trying to find a shortcut. You made a bad decision. But next time, my money's on you not to go down that back alley, right?
Yes.
You're going to go a long circuitous route to get to where you need to get to.
Yes. Yes. Or you're going to drive and not get out of your car.
Exactly.
And
Right.
keep your doors locked, which I didn't do that day. But
Right.
Albert has his hands up. But real quick before we go to Albert, we have some comments from YouTube. I think it's all YouTube. So thank you, Bruce, because he says we love Britella. Thank you so much. And then he also says, how does he work with those suffering from grief?
Well, there's two things about grief. You've got different layers, but a lot of times when you're grieving for that lost situation or feeling. But what I've been able to figure out over the years is grief is shame and guilt wrapped up in the same thing. So when you have shame, you're shameful of your identity. When you have guilt, that's your behavior. And everybody thinks shame and guilt's the same. Totally different.
It is
But
different.
grief, we have to. I had to grieve my childhood. I had to grieve that my childhood cost me my mother. I had to grieve my childhood cost me my father. Right? Now we're friends, but I had to grieve my loss. I had to grieve that. And grief, you go through these layers and it's not pleasant. And most people who have a lot of grief have a lot of stuff still in the shadows. So
Thank
hopefully
you.
that helps.
Hopefully that helps. Yes. All right, Albert, I'm going to bring you on. You can ask your question or make a comment, ever it is.
Hi there, Tim.
Hello, Albert.
Tim, from what you've been talking about now, the questions come to mind, and you've partly answered it with grief, but have you had experience with people getting involved with drugs or alcohol as a result of trauma and grief and all of that sort of stuff happening to them?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, we have addicts, we have, and not just addicts to drug and alcohol, we have addicts to sex, different types of dangerous behavior, right? The problem is when I work with an addict, a lot of times when I work with, I don't know, somebody who's a heroin addict, okay, or a crack
Okay.
addict, there's a moment, Albert, where they said screw it and they did it anyway. And their body remembered the spot where they injected. So
Okay.
now if you have an addict that's 15 years in an addict and they've been in and out of halfway houses and all kinds of addiction centers and stuff like that, right? I like to try to reverse engineer their addiction. And I like to try to get to a point where they say, screw it. And when you can get to that point, and you can get them to realize that they were 16 years old and maybe their mom threw a beer bottle at them or something happened with like a broom handle stick or whatever, right? The moment they say that, they're locking in to their body and their fascia the moment they gave up on themselves. So when I work with addicts, I find the spot. And when I hit that spot, they break. And when they break, we pull that needle out of the vein of their fascia and their mind. And they start to realize that they did it to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's
So is
the
that
ultimate healing.
Yeah, carry on.
No, that's the ultimate healing. Right? Granted, we have, bad things happen to great people. Right? But when we become our own trauma and we say, well, yeah, I'm going to check out and become comfortably numb, right? We know we're dancing with the devil. We know we're doing something we shouldn't do. But we go, forget it. I'm going to do it anyway. And when you can get them to realize that they gave up on themselves, that's when you can start to rescue them, start to pull them out, start them to go,
Okay.
oh, wait a minute. You mean I can only control from my fingertips backwards? I can't control the external world? Yeah, that's right. So you have a choice. You can either control your actions and your thoughts and understand that's your responsibility and stop looking for society or other people to help you. Does that make
Is
sense?
that why at times yes, it does. So unless you hit that spot, there's times then you can go in and back and forth with recovery centers and they do nothing because you haven't found that sweet spot, if you want to call it that.
And that's why the business that I have and the other people have is called Rooted Somatics, because what we're doing is we're getting to the root. And a lot of times I have psychotherapists and psychologists that send people to me or us, and they come back and go, well, wow, I didn't know they had that happen to them. Yeah, because they didn't even know it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, believe me, I'm not poo-pooing the healing community or the addiction recovery center, but we're using a one-dimensional approach, which is this, right? The brain has its own central nervous system. And then the fascia is the second nervous system of the brain or the body. So if that fascial system's traumatized, it's going to keep the score. You have Mr. Levine, you have Besser van der Kolk, right? You have all these great people who figured out the body holds the score. The body keeps the score. And until the therapeutic model stops looking at trying to fix this and not this, not the heart, right? You got to fix the fascial system. You got to fix that body. Once you do that, now you have the yin and the yang that now can start to talk to each other.
Great stuff, Tim. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Albert.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That was a great question. And we appreciate you so much.
Thanks.
I do. Literally, he was talking about you yesterday, saying he missed you. No, you were saying about Albert that you missed Albert. All right, so we have
thank you.
He did. All right, so we have a couple more things that were said. Okay, so MRRODW31 says, hello, everyone. Tim has so much deep but practical knowledge. And then it says, I love Tim's down-to-earth practical knowledge. So from the same person. And then again, I love the trauma is trauma. No one or nothing is more important than the other. As we say in training, what's heavy to you is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good point. I think that was Rod. Thank you.
That's great.
His comments.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was good. Because it's true, because something can happen to me,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of everything that my whole life has been. Like, something can happen to me and I'll like blow it off, like whatever. And the same thing can happen to somebody else and they can just crumble and fall apart or withdraw and go into shell. And then like it can traumatize them in the same way that maybe it traumatized me, 40 years ago. Oh my God. I'm so old now. It's like, it would be 60 years ago, 50 years ago, actually. But yeah, it's
well, not only that, I mean, when I went through my second divorce, right? I didn't realize that my nervous system was so jacked up that when I went to the doctor's office and this guy, he's sitting there, he's calling me overweight. And he's basically saying that I'm overweight and he's wearing a vest. It's pushed out and his stomach's big. And I'm like, you're giving me advice. Okay, I understand. You did your time and all that stuff. That's great. But my blood pressure's high. But then when I started really healing myself from the trauma of my past, my nervous system went down. My blood pressure went down. My cortisol levels went down. This is what people need to understand. There's a thing called the HPA axis, right? The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is just a fancy way for saying nervous system, hormonal system, and the adrenal system. So if we've had trauma to our body, all three of those are locked up and tight. And no amount of rainbows and puppy dogs and kumbaya and all this other stuff is going to help it until you get in there and physically pry that open to be exposed.
Right.
So I'm almost 58 years old, right? I had to go through that. I'm like, damn, I still got more to go. And yet I'm a person where people seek me out. That was humbling as hell. but it was worth it, because what I did is I realized I wasn't for scanning for danger all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. I was coming home being proud of being a healer or whatever the heck you want to call me, right? And I would manifest myself and set myself on fire for my clients. But then I would go home and I'd lick my wounds and I'd be like, yeah, I was a good boy. I did a good job. And then 6 months ago, I went, wait a minute, why am I suffering when I'm not supposed to take you through your own hallway? Right? So I'll take you to that edge, the threshold, but you're on your own afterwards.
Yeah. Because we need to do our work.
Exactly. And what
We
I was
have to do the
doing,
work.
exactly what I was doing was saying, okay, I'm going to be so hyper aware that I'm going to try and try and try and try and try and try. And then I said, well, wait a minute. If I went through trauma, Ruth Ellen went through trauma, and half the people that are watching this show went through some kind of trauma, right? Who am I to get in the way of their learning lesson? Right?
Right. That's a good point, because I saw something not that long ago that said, don't try to rescue someone because you may be interfering with the lesson that God has for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can take us so far, but
Yep.
in the end, I had to process my traumas. I had to work through it. I had to support my body and my mind and my spirit, and it's really important. And, nutrition plays a factor in that too, because you had the hypothalamus support and de-stress, I think, and
Sure.
things that we can take that help us to, feed and nutrify our bodies, so that, because it's exhausting
Yeah.
going through it. It fries your everything. It just fries everything. And you think that, like sitting there, and thinking, oh my, did that just happen? I don't, and there were times I couldn't even leave your house. Like, I had to drink tea, like, to calm me. And you think,
I
did that
know.
just happen? And then I go to my car and I'd wait because I couldn't drive because my mind was, and then I would unpack that suitcase a little bit at a time. And I think
Sure.
we revisited a few things a couple times, and I talked to my sponsor about a few things. And then I had to write. I think you made me write stuff for a while because it was
Yep.
so bad that I had to write things down. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good point, because you can do what you can do, but in the end, you can release the fascia and release that trauma. But we as individuals, client, have to work on ourselves and how we can wrap our head around it, accept it, and say, okay, that happened. This isn't real right now. It can go over there, and I'll revisit it when I need to, and we'll work on it, and then it kind of goes away. So,
It doesn't go, I don't think it
well, it
goes away.
doesn't go away, but it's not in your face.
What it does is it loses its intensity,
Mhm.
because you've, worked on looking at the trauma from the beginning to the end, and the end to the middle, and the middle to the beginning, and you've scratched that record so far down. All
Mhm.
hail Tony Robbins, because he came up with that, right? That it won't play the same thing.
Right.
And
Yes.
when it doesn't play the same thing, you're free.
Yes, because when I say goes away, to me, it's like I'm watching a movie about it, and it's happening to somebody else. It's like a movie. It doesn't have any impact because it's not real to me. Like we watch movies and people are getting murdered and slaughtered. And if you're in action movies, and like the actor's fine because he could be in the next one or a different show. And I think EFT tapping also helps when you get stuck, because you can tap, and then you get it to where, like with Vietnam vets, they would have them remember something that was so traumatizing that they couldn't stop drinking and medicating themselves. And they would do the tapping, and then it would get to where the vet would say, and they'd say, what is your emotional charge? Is it a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And they would say, I don't know. It's like I'm watching a movie and it doesn't matter. Like, and it's important to be able to get to where things, and this is my opinion, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact my life. And I can just move on.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we have a hand up. So if you want to comment back about that, we have a hand up. So whichever.
No, go ahead. Who
Okay.
wants to?
All right. Rebecca Dukes, come on down.
Oh, this has been really, really eye-opening. As myself, we didn't have a whole lot of drama allowed within the home, so we held a lot of stuff in. And so it's like I've got tingling in my fingertips thinking about it.
That's
So I just
visceral.
want to thank you, Tim, for coming on. What was that?
That's visceral response. What you're doing is you're processing. So your body's telling you something. And what you want to do is listen to it because it still has a hold on you.
Probably. I'm not going to deny it.
No, but
I was always
it's
taught.
nice that your body's talking to you. A lot of
Yeah,
people's bodies don't talk to them.
that is true. That is true. I know, burying bones, everybody's got their skeletons to bury, keep
Oh
them
yeah.
buried. That
Oh yeah.
was that was what I, kind of the philosophy that I was
Mhm.
taught growing up. But we do have a question that says, what should you do when you witness or overhear abuse? For instance, this person says, yesterday I was in the grocery store and a 10-year-old boy was just asking his mother questions about some products. When his mother responded, if you don't stop asking questions, I'm going to beat you badly when we get home. I'm like,
Well, to me, that's a common sense answer, right? You don't just go ahead and, you first of all, you're looking at this situation. You're not realizing the mom could be stressed. You're not realizing what the mom dealt with 3 hours before that. But, like the one thing that I tell people is if you think something happened, common sense says act on it if you want to. Right? I'm not going to sit there and say don't do anything because I don't want that situation to be that situation of a woman in New York that wound up getting assaulted in New York and everybody heard it happen. I don't know what it was, but it was something where everybody kept passing the buck and she wound up getting hurt. But that's just the common sense. If you think somebody's, you gotta either act on it or understand that, you may be taking that out of context.
yeah. Well, and I don't know. I mean, there are some kids that just ask questions and just don't stop. And I think that's one thing that we as parents have to learn how to communicate with
Yeah.
our children, and then have that open communication. For me, I love it when my kids ask me about products and we're reading
Mhm.
labels. That's just more time that we're spending together. But yeah, that's
But you know what?
definitely.
You brought up an interesting point, and I'll just plug this real quick. If you get on Amazon, you'll see there's a series of books called the Angry Ninja series, and it's books to teach younger children emotional IQ knowledge. Because we have IQ and then there's EQ, emotional Q, right? So I have a bunch of clients who are challenging. And when I show them this book, whether it's the Angry Ninja, Fearful Ninja, Shy, Bashful Ninja, whatever, right? When they read it and they read it to their daughter or their son, they both heal because they're both healing emotionally, not up here, emotionally. So There's a lot of people out there that have high IQs, but low EQs. So that could be something for someone out there to look at. It's a great, great little book series. You can get on YouTube and look them up. But there's a lot of people who have trauma who have IQs, but they don't have the EQ because their emotional self was traumatized when they were traumatized. So they're always trying to solve, they're always trying to figure out. Sometimes it's not about figuring out. Sometimes it's about being passive and being submissive, to be able to submit to the reality.
So submitting to reality rather than just
Pushing it away.
pushing it away.
Pushing it away. So in my case, I had years of attracting certain types of individuals. Well, that's because I was taught by one of those individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And once I realized, wow, man, okay, I have to work on this. So then I became a better parent to myself than I was parented to. And I worked on parenting myself and developing a life that was safe and not unsafe.
Right. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. You're telling, come back. I know there's one thing that I've said often is when we're working with our coaches, like, be the coach you wish you had had.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, well, I was never coached. I'm like, okay, how would you want to be coached? Set
right.
that example as you're helping to coach others. So,
And the same thing can be said for Gandhi. Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank
Well,
you.
we're at the top of the hour. That went fast.
It did go fast.
Is there anything you would like to close out with?
I guess the last thing that I want to tell the viewers is sometimes if we're swallowed by a snake and we're inside the belly of the beast, we have to understand that God or the universe always gave us a fork and a knife. And if we can eat one bite at a time, we can chew our ass out of the snake.
Yes. That is true. That is true.
But sometimes we forget we have those built-in fork and knives.
Mm. Yes, we do. And we definitely have teeth.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. I forget exactly. There's a gosh, what is it? A shaman once said to one of my friends did ayahuasca, and the shaman said, if the snake tries to eat you, let it eat you. Jump into its mouth so your ego can die.
Yep.
And you will come out a completely different person.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of saying,
there's
right?
a great book. There's a great book that I had to read for my childhood trauma called Swallowed by a Snake. And in that book, that's where I got that from. And I read that a long time ago, but my trauma was heavy
Yes.
duty. So,
Yes, it was.
But you know what? We're all dealt different cards. The DNA deals our cards. It's our environment that plays those cards.
That is very profound and true. It is. And I know for me, life has been life and it's been what it's been. But if that helps me help one person, then it was worth it.
That's it.
When
and it meant all your suffering
Mhm.
was not in vain.
Yes, it wasn't. And like when I work with women in addiction and different things, you know, they'll be telling me their story. And sometimes they say something and it's like, I kicked my dog. And then somebody else will say they like lit their husband's clothes on fire and burned his car. Like, and to them, it's the same guilt and shame.
Yep.
You know, and
It's just wearing a different mask.
It's wearing a different mask. And, you know, and then, you know, I working through things with, you know, I very much love my recovery program. And you just have to meet people where they're at. And, you know, I'm not there to say, well, this happened to me. It's, I understand I had something similar to that happen to me. So I can understand what you're saying. I don't have to tell them my stuff.
No.
You know, I
As
don't.
a matter of fact, that's a trauma response. When you do that, I've done that. That's you looking for justification as to why you do what you do. But if you can sit back and you can let them crash over your jetty and you can just take it and contain them, and you don't have to say anything, that's some of the most powerful things you could say.
Good. I'm glad I'm doing it right. Oh, it's been wonderful having you on. Thank you so much.
It's good to be back.
Where would you like people to find you?
Well, I've got the Rooted Somatics. That's Rooted Somatics, all one word, .com website. I have Rooted Wisdom podcast on Spotify. I just started. There's a really good couple podcasts on shame and guilt.
Yes, very good.
You know, we have the Rooted Somatics Facebook page. We have the Rooted Somatics Instagram, all that stuff. But, you know, I just want to finish with, if you're out there and you've tried every way to try to release trauma, find yourself someone who does a really deep tissue trauma release or whatever, and see if that's not the missing piece. Because if you keep doing the same thing over again, you get the same results. That's insanity. So something has to switch.
Yes, it does. It has to switch. And you have to be willing and ready to accept it, even if it takes you 4 months to do it.
No, you're right.
Yeah. We have somebody in here in the participant list that said Rooted Somatics is one of your team on.
Yeah?
Yeah, it says Rooted Somatics.
Okay.
Do you want to see who it is or?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know who it is.
All right. All right. So person Rooted Somatics, can you unmute yourself? Oh, I'm trying to do that and it's not letting me. I'm hitting the wrong button. Okay. Can somebody help me?
I've asked several times.
Okay. All right.
Everyone.
All right. Well, we'll find out later. So thank
Yeah,
you,
I'll probably
Tim, for
find out
being
tomorrow.
here. It was really wonderful. And I'm very, very grateful to just have you in my world. It has been a true blessing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So if I can get my co-host to come on with me, then we will close out the show and I'll just do a quick little, this was for educational purposes only, not meant to treat, diagnose, or cure, or anything like that. Also, I want to remind people to be kind. As you heard today, you don't know what somebody's going through, and they could be all smiles and happy, and the world could be like awful for them, and they just keep plugging along. So just be kind. Also, if you would like to talk to a certified holistic health coach, you can call us at 855-949-3377. and talk to somebody. Also, you could go to dailywithdoc.com if you would like some information on some of the supplements that we just mentioned, a couple, the hypothalamus support or the de-stress. Also, if you're working with somebody, please make sure you get back with that person because they are your coach and they care about you, or they wouldn't have told you to come to Daily with Doc and Becca show. And let's see. And if you have a question, even if it's for Tim, you can email us at questions@dailywithdoc.com. And so we, of course, have Rod, who is here and is out there on the platforms, bringing questions in and helping us out and stimulates conversation there. And then we have Marilyn, Miss Speedy Fingers, who dictates everything we say, practically every word. And she even looks stuff up. I don't know how she does that. She'll look something up and she doesn't skip a beat. So I don't know how you do that. You're like magical. You're like a unicorn. That's what you are. And so we're very grateful for her. And then we have Phyllis, who is also helping in the chat and on the platforms. Thank you for covering for me today. I love you. Thank you so much. And she does that all the time anyway. And she also helped Dr. Wallach get on the radio. But what I love, I don't want to say the most, but one thing that she says that I appreciate so much is when we say, "How are you today?" She says, "Just right." And that's what we should call her, but it doesn't fit everything she does. And then we have Sherry, who is part of the tech crew. She is the assistant production manager, or assistant production person. And she gets everything. Like I send a signal from my computer and she gets it somewhere else and then she sends it out. But she also sets all of that stuff up prior to the show. So I don't know what I'd do without you. And I love you. Thank you. And then we have Albert, who is our gatekeeper. And as I always say, he is a gentleman. And I really appreciate him. And there aren't enough words for all of them, but really appreciate you. And then, of course, we have AJ, who's out there without a camera on. And he is the digital marketing director, and he helps us get to all the platforms, creates websites, and the list goes on for miles. So thank you, AJ. And then we have Rebecca Dukes, who is the executive producer of the show and the hostess with the mostest of Daily with Doc and Becca. And she does a lot of things, and she is like, she's my sister in my heart. And I love you too. I don't know if it'll work. It's not to where it's supposed to make hearts, but it doesn't do it on there. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And Tim, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to setting something up with you in the next few weeks. Because you always have lots of, and see all the hearts you're getting, lots of good stuff. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Ask your people what they want to talk about. We can do another question and answer. We can get more people, Okay. Let's walk that beach and throw a bunch of starfish back into the ocean.
Yes. Yes. So you heard that, everybody. That's a call to action. Let us know what you would like Tim to talk about next, and we will make that happen. So thank you, everyone. And I'm Rebecca. I'm Ruth Ellen Sanchez. And I was grateful to be here with you, and be kind, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach.